Temi Binitie is a British Nigerian who describes herself as unconventional.
If I'm honest, I love the fact that it was different.
In today's series of The Incredible Everyday Woman, Temi shares her journey in the maritime industry, which she joined at the age of 25, running 10K marathon in memory of a loved one, and being part of the team that made the Olympic 2012 here in the UK.
I have a great picture with Ryan Giggs. It's probably one of the best memories I was fortunate enough to create. The types of people of the industry, a woman isn't that, and neither is a black woman, not even to mention a Nigerian. I've got an appetite for running. I've since described running as my therapy. I'm one of three. I'm the only girl in my house, and I'm the youngest of my two older brothers. I moved to England when I was 10 years old, and the idea was to get a better education, because at that time in Nigeria there was a lot of unrest, and the education system wasn't as it would be. So when I moved here and I was fish out of water, it was a little bit of a culture shock, to say the least. Fast forward, I went to University of Reading. And there I reconnected with a lot of my Nigerian friends, or Nigerian youths as it were. And then on one of my vacations to Nigeria, my father introduced me in his establishment. Oh, meet my daughter, she's a lawyer. I'm like, no daddy, I'm not a lawyer. I just studied it as my first degree. The client who was there was like, oh, do you know about the law of the sea? And I was like, huh, what's that? And he was like, yes, the law of the sea. So I was like, okay. I don't know anything about it, but I'll do my research. So upon coming back to England from Christmas holiday, I found out about it, and I thought, this is very interesting. This is very left. This is very unconventional. And I guess the spirit moved me, and I was led in that direction, because I don't know anybody in shipping. I don't know anything about ships. I didn't know anything about ships at that time. So I studied my master's in International Maritime and Commercial Law. So I have an LLM. And during that 1 year in Swansea, I met the most amazing set of people. I had fun while studying, which was weird, because I guess it was my first 3 years of undergrad. I didn't really have that much of an experience. I had a great time in social aspects, but not necessarily whilst I was learning. So when I did that, I then thought, oh, this sounds like if I can have so much fun learning, then maybe I can have this much fun working in it. So shipping, to put it into context for you, is probably the oldest industry in the world, aside from prostitution. And that's not a joke. Truth. It's the truth.
I'm sorry, I have to laugh.
People have moved stuff on the waterways for as long as history dates back. So when you think of the origins of the industry, it gives you an idea of the types of people and characters that are very, very, that are the majority. And a woman isn't that, and neither is a black woman, not even to mention a Nigerian. What attracted me to it, I think, has to stem from my 1 year in Swansea. I loved it because it was very culturally diverse. It was a nice way to be involved in the international business industries, but not having to constantly be traveling around the world. If I'm honest, I love the fact that it was different. I love the fact that I wasn't going to be a lawyer. I wasn't going to be a doctor. If it all worked out, I would be something very, very different. My very first boss, who I refer to as Daddy T, was a bon vivant, is the easiest way of describing him. And he had an incredible skill for drinking. But at the same time, the maritime industry, or the shipping industry then, was very social. It still is, and a lot of business is done not in an office, but maybe in a pub or a restaurant or dinner. And we used to have, there was a term, I'm sure it still exists, but not so many people do it, called Londinis. So you go from lunch straight into dinner. And you go from lunch straight into dinner. I learned how to drink when I started my job, but at the same time, he gave me a trick. He was like, you don't just drink everything that they give you. Find the thing that you can drink that makes sure that you're still able to be sane But then people can see that she's still drinking and she's still having a good time. I still needed to be able to do my job, right? Because I needed to be able to fix the ship regardless of wherever it is that I was. So that's where Liquid Lunches literally came in, and it was his way of obviously introducing me to the market and to the business and to the people that I would need to do business with on a regular basis. But then it was over food or over drink, and my clothes stopped fitting.
How is that a surprise?
I guess, at the young age, I won't mention the number, but at the young age, you kind of think, okay, it doesn't really matter. And you don't really, and I've never had like weight issues or anything like that. So I was like, what is going on? And then I realized that, okay, I'm doing too much eating and not enough moving. And so I decided to take up running. Sometimes to avoid going to lunches, I'm like, oh, I'm going for a run. And then my boss will be like, okay, go for a run now so you're back. So you're good.
And then meet her.
And then meet people. So I was like, okay, fine. If I get to do the two at the same time, no worries. From eating too much, lunches, I just, okay, this has to stop because it's too expensive to buy new clothes. I've since described running as my therapy. So if I'm ever having a bad day in the office in the morning, to just try and break my day up and get a different perspective, I would go for a run, and I would run along the Thames.
I'd like to touch a bit more on the story around the marathon.
Okay.
Why you ran the marathon, and maybe we can veer into the Olympics of 2012.
I ran the marathon in 2014, and I ran it on behalf of the Sailor Society, which is a Christian maritime charity. They focus on the well-being of seafarers, and it's one of those things that it's quite isolating on a vessel, and sometimes you don't have cognizance of that. We are so used to having connectivity via the internet that we take it for granted. These guys are on board vessels for weeks on end and don't necessarily always have access to speaking to their family, their loved ones, and they're thousands and thousands of miles away. So I had always thought about it. I'd sponsored people who'd run the marathon. With this charity that I had recently gotten involved with, they had said, they were looking for people to run, and I was like, okay. And so one day I just saw the application form, and I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. If I don't do it now, I never will. I was obviously moved because of my love of the work of the charity, that I was willing to endure 26.2 miles of running around London, not knowing what the weather was going to be like on the day. It could have been raining, cold. And so because of my love of the charity, I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to do this, and I'm going to raise money for them and raise awareness as well, because I think that was also key in the sense that a lot of people didn't know about the maritime industry, let alone about seafarers and their plight. The fathers, the mothers, the uncles, the aunties that are on board the vessels that make things happen for you and I. Without them, our fridges don't get here. Without them, we don't have oil to be able to put in our cars. Without them, all the clothes that come from China and all those various different things just don't happen. And they're so invincible that at that time, I was moved to bring them to the forefront. I call 2014 my year of impossibles, because I never thought I could do it. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to try. And I did, and I had a great time doing it. The Olympics was announced that it was going to be in London. I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. I then saw, okay, they're looking for volunteers. I was like, this is an opportunity to be part of history. Games makers were literally a representation of London. So you were a meter and greeter. So I had a variety of roles. You got to experience London in a very different way. And I was stationed at the Olympic Stadium, which was even more amazing. And I was there on opening ceremony night. There was never a particular day that I did the same thing. And that was, I guess, the beauty of it. And you never saw the same people. Olympic night, I have a great picture with Ryan Giggs. It was probably one of the best memories I was fortunate enough to create, and I will hold my Olympic Park days truly a memory. And I still wear my Olympic jackets. It's like, so when I wear it, I'm like, yeah, look at the bag.
Can I just clap? Because I don't know anyone. I've not been. I feel like I need to touch you now. Like you made history, Olympics 2012.